Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. If you're in enterprise finance, you already know that the tools you use dictate exactly how fast and how accurately you can steer the ship. Well, today we're diving into a massive, absolutely critical engine upgrade for your financial systems. We're talking about the transition from legacy SAP KPM all the way to SAP Analytics Cloud Planning, or SAC for short. Let me just ask you a question right out of the gate. Is your finance team still suffering from rigid, spreadsheet-style planning matrices that are completely locked-in functional silos? Honestly, if you're still relying on legacy systems for profitability planning, you're probably spending way more time wrangling data than actually analyzing it. Let's change that today. So here's our roadmap for the discussion. We're going to cover 1. The legacy planning trap. 2. The modern SAC paradigm. 3. Architecture and data mapping. 4. Real-world profitability scenarios. 5. Governing the new ecosystem. And finally, 6. Your strategic migration plan. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the legacy planning trap, the historic limits of COPI and KPM. To really appreciate where we're going, we kind of have to understand where we've been. For decades, SAP ECC users relied heavily on COPA, profitability analysis, and the KPM framework to model their revenues, COGS, and margins. But the architecture was incredibly rigid. It basically mimicked inflexible text-heavy spreadsheets that were permanently tied to the old SAP GUI. And the real bottleneck here? The massive IT dependency. If you wanted to create a new distribution key or change a planning dimension, you couldn't just do it on the fly. It required custom ABAP development. Your planning was completely siloed, totally isolated from your vital HR or supply chain systems. Business agility was practically zero. Moving on to Section 2, the modern SAC paradigm. Introducing S/4HANA margin analysis and SAC planning. Contrast all that old-school rigidity with modern usability. Instead of painful entry grids and a notoriously steep learning curve, SAC brings a super intuitive, web-based, responsive design. But most importantly, it introduces business user self-service modeling. You're no longer sitting around waiting on an IT ticket just to adjust a visual story or tweak a model dimension. The planner is directly empowered to do it themselves. And guys, the technological leap in intelligence here is honestly staggering. Legacy KPM had zero AI readiness. You were stuck relying on manual historical run rates that had to be adjusted entirely outside the system. Compare that to SAC planning. It acts as an ex-P&A fabric natively equipped with SAP Business AI. You instantly gain automated time series predictive forecasting, driver identification, and anomaly detection. You're leaping straight from static manual percentages to a highly dynamic predictive engine. Which brings us to Section 3, architecture and data mapping. Time to lift the hood on the data engine. Now this is where the magic actually happens. We need to define two critical tables over in S/4HANA. First up, ACDOC. This is your absolute single source of truth for financial actuals, sitting right there in the Universal Journal. Second is ACDOP, which is the native table for your plan data. In this modern architecture, AC connects directly to ACDOC to read your actuals. You can do all your heavy mid-month sandbox iterations and rough cut planning over in SAC, completely insulating your core ERP. Then, the moment the budget is approved, SAC writes it directly back to ACDOP. This entirely eliminates data synchronization lag and gives you native, real-time plan versus actual variance reporting. Now, legacy COPA systems often crashed or just slowed to an absolute crawl because they tried to do line item planning, which created massive data bloat. We bypass all of that with what we call the right-sized granularity principle. Operational detail stays in the source systems exactly where it belongs. Over in SAC, we aggregate the planning. Think product family, customer group, region, and month. We bring in only the necessary drivers, which keeps the whole system lightning fast and prevents millions of duplicated, totally unnecessary ledger lines. Of course, to get actuals and plan data to align perfectly, we require a strict semantic map. We map market segment dimensions like customer to slice the data, financial ledger objects like cost centers for compliance, profitability metrics from revenue down to contribution margin, and planning controls like versions for side-by-side scenario modeling. Having this clear, one-to-one alignment is what builds real enterprise reporting trust. All right, Section 4, real-world profitability scenarios. Taking the new engine on the test track. So what does this look like in practice? Here are some high-impact use cases SAC enables. Instead of forcing your sales managers to manually type final revenue numbers into a grid, SAC gives you driver-based revenue forecasting. Planners just input anticipated unit volumes and average selling prices, and SAC's advanced formulas automatically cross-calculate your gross revenues across the entire product hierarchy. We can also handle really complex customer and channel profitability, pushing top-down distributions using actual historical run rates from ACDOK as the weight. It's fully automated. And this level of integration literally allows you to simulate reality. Because SEC connects directly to SAP IBP, if a commodity index spikes by 10%, an analyst can ingest that data and instantly run a scenario to see the down-funnel erosion on gross margin. Or you can pull headcount projections and compensation bands straight from SAP SuccessFactors to accurately calculate direct sales commissions from multi-tiered contribution margin analysis. You are modeling reality in real time. Now for Section 5, Governing the New Ecosystem, Maintenance and Operational Governance. Look, to prevent a high-performance system from drifting as your data volumes grow, you absolutely need strict architectural governance. You do this through a rigorous dev-to-test to prod workspace lifecycle. You develop your new calculations in dev. You let your business power users validate those advanced script adjustments in an isolated test tier, and only then do you safely deploy to your live prod environment. This isolation policy is absolutely vital to protect your planning cycles. Proactive maintenance is equally huge. You really shouldn't be waiting around for users to complain about slow load times. SAC actually provides a native performance analysis tool that lets administrators monitor request timelines to see right away if a bottleneck is just network latency or an unoptimized query. Plus, forming an internal change advisory board, or CAB, ensures you have finance and IT leadership actively working together to purge expired data versions and catch new platform innovations early from SAP release notes. Finally, Section 6, your strategic migration plan. Meet your pit crew at sacplans.com. I really want you to remember this quote. Enterprise performance is not dictated by how well you can build a budget, but by how fast your organization can react to reality. Legacy tools basically treated planning as a static, backward-looking exercise. Modern SAP planning is all about dynamic, reactive agility. It connects your financial targets directly with your operational capabilities. But to successfully pull off this transition, you're going to need an expert guide. SACplans.com is an independent advisory and consulting platform dedicated entirely to SAP Analytics Cloud planning. They provide the framework-driven architecture leadership and the deep SAP expertise you need to finally eliminate your legacy technical debt. Whether you're starting completely fresh or optimizing a setup you already have, they ensure your implementation perfectly aligns with SAP best practices and drives real business outcomes. So what's the actual actionable takeaway to maximize your ROI? It's executing a hybrid target architecture migration in 3 super clear steps. Step 1, establish that fast loop integration connecting SAC to S/4HANA for real-time actuals and plan writebacks. Step 2, ingest your key operational drivers directly from SAP IBP and SuccessFactors. Step 3, deploy SAP DataSphere as your central enterprise semantic layer to perfectly harmonize all your complex multi-source datasets. That right there is the blueprint for a future-ready planning ecosystem. Which brings us to one final big question. Are you ready to trade those rigid planning matrices for a truly dynamic, forward-looking enterprise driver? The technology is here, the framework is incredibly proven, and the business value is just undeniable. I highly recommend reaching out to the experts at sacplans.com to kick off your transformation journey today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.